Your time has expired.
Oh, okay.
I'll call Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd firstly like to congratulate the Honourable Willie Jackson, who seems to be able to have set his alarm clock very well this morning. So that's great to see you in the chair, Minister. I want to talk about the collection of information, and I'd like to, and while I accept this as a vital part and a role for the Commission to actually utilise the information that they have and that can be gathered by them and other agencies to help inform for future disasters and the management of the disaster that they're in at that time. However, I would point to the evidence given in Select Committee by the Privacy Commission. And the Privacy Commissioner, their role, of course, is to scrutinise, or one of their roles, is to scrutinise legislation and to consider how that may or may not affect the privacy of individuals. And in their submission, firstly, they pointed out they weren't able to see the legislation before it was entered into the House, and I think that is not a good thing in the first instance. And I think, really, it's sort of I guess, really what's been happening with this government has been quite schizophrenic in some ways, where it's rushing headlong in with great haste to do some things, and other things they're putting all of these commissions and inquiries and so on. But a little bit more care would be much more helpful, I think, to ensure that we get good legislation, because we all accept right across the House that the EQC has a vital role to play, and that it being set up as a good organisation is underpinned by legislation. And if we don't get the legislation right, then we're not doing a good service to those people who were badly affected in Christchurch, and will be in the future if we don't get this legislation right. And I'd point to their comments on the bill relate solely to clause 31A. That was where their big concerns were. And they're very concerned they didn't have the opportunity to review the bill prior to its introduction. So they proposed an alternative. Well, they said there was unintended consequences for the privacy and lead to greater complexity for EQC. And I think those are things that we should be concerned about. We want this organisation to be able to run smoothly and provide the service that we all expect. And so they proposed that clause 31A be removed. And so I'd really like to have the Minister tell us, what reaction that the Minister has to that. What does the Minister think that would be achieved for the greater good without impacting on the privacy of individuals? I think it's vital that we don't trample on those rights of individuals. So 31A4, they thought they don't support the clause, and as it departed from the definition of personal information under the Privacy Act. They think that creating bespoke definition for EQC's specific circumstances is unnecessary. And once again, we support EQC. We support the whole premise of the legislation. However, we have to be mindful of people's privacy. And so a little more care, I think, in the work behind drafting this legislation would have been well rewarded, and it would have made things much simpler for people in this situation. I know the Select Committee spent a lot of time going over these issues, and I think that we owe it to ourselves when entering legislation onto the books that we do a good job. And the Select Committee process is part of that, but getting things before institutions such as the Privacy Commissioner ahead of the introduction of a bill would short-circuit a whole lot of these issues. And so I'd really like to hear from the Minister and the Chair his reaction to that. And I'm sure that he looks bright and sparky this morning. I'm sure he's ready to answer the question and ease all of our concerns on this side of the House so that we may go further through with this bill with a greater sense of confidence that New Zealand is going to be well served by this legislation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I call Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to take a brief call. It probably will be